What's going on, everybody? My name is Kyren Monteiro. I'm the CEO and the president of Frequency Canvas, and award-winning audio production specializing in audio mixing and mastering services. And today, I want to talk about the age-old topic of analog summing versus digital summing, and in modern day music production and audio production, is it still worth it? Now, let's go back. Nowadays, we use what's called a DAW, which is a digital audio workstation. And rather that's Pro Tools, Studio Pro, formerly known as Studio One, Logic Pro, Cubase, Ableton Live, whatever your DAW may be, the list goes on and on. Back in the day, people used big format consoles, rather it was 16, 24, 48 tracks of channels and you know, on this console, and then they recorded to tape, and tape would be what everything was recorded to, and that would be what your playback was through. And then in the mixing process, as the tape would play back through the console, you were separated, all of those tracks would have to be summed into what's called a 2-track or a stereo track, and that stereo track would be the final print of the mix. Now we export, render, or bounce, right? And we just have files now. But back then that would be what it was, and then it would go off to mastering, etc. But all summing is in the mixing process, taking all of those tracks that you have and summing them all together, the total sum of all of those tracks, and then putting it into a stereo file that is playable, right? And so obviously I can go way deeper into it, but in basically quick layman's terms, summing is taking all of your tracks that you have in your mixing session and putting them all together, and then that becomes the final file, the final mix file. And in today's world, that would be the final stereo file, wave file, AIFF, MP3. Hopefully you're not using MP3s, but people still do it. So anyways, there has been an argument throughout the years that once the music and audio world switched to DAW-based production and Pro Tools and other DAWs, that there was something lost. There was something special about analog summing when it was done on the console, right? The harmonics and the warmth and the mistakes that analog gear makes. There's something about all of those channels talking to each other, which is called crosstalk, from a console and coming together. There's just something magical about the entire process of analog summing. And analog circuitry, there is something special about that. But there is downfalls about that, right? So in the digital world, if you're not using any analog equipment, and if you're not doing any analog summing these days in a hybrid workflow, and if you're just doing it in a DAW, right, the DAW just figures it out mathematically and gives you the file that way. Well, there's different processes, and in the digital world, it used to have a fixed point, and then we went to a floating point, and the floating 32-bit float, 64-bit float, that fixed a lot of those problems that people were having, right? So let's talk about some of the drawbacks of analog summing. Analog summing is more expensive, right? Because you have to buy analog summing mixer that's going to be anywhere from $2,000 to possibly $10,000. You have to have the I/O, which is the ins and outputs. You have to have an interface to be able to have that. More cables, patch bay, more power conditioning, and it takes longer. You also have to do what's called a real-time bounce, meaning that every time you want to export a mix file, you have to record the entire file through. So these are just things to consider before diving into it, right? Now, in my opinion, I think that analog summing will always be superior to digital summon when it comes to the sound. When we're talking about just off of sonics alone, right? Taking away workflow hassles and which is easier, which is faster, which is cheaper. When it comes to just the sound of analog summon alone, in my opinion, I don't think digital will ever be able to be superior or surpass analog summon. I think just what you get from second, third, fourth harmonics, the color that you get, the depth, the separation, the impact of the stereo image, how defined things is. I don't think that digital is going to be able to do that. I think there's a lot of complex things that happen during the process of analog summon, and I think that's a lot to code an algorithm and say, do all of this. Now, plugins are amazing. DAWs are amazing. So digital audio workstations and plugins have come a long way, and they sound amazing. And now here in our studio on Frequency Canvas, we use a hybrid workflow. So I sum through a SSL 6 console here in our main room, and through other, you know, I have other 2 bus processing, other bus processing on the mix bus, and it works in conjunction with digital, and I take the best of both worlds and I put them together, because I think in order for me to do what I love to do sonically, it benefits both to have both. But the question is analog versus digital summon, which is better? Sonically, I think analog summon is going to be better. It's going to be superior sonically, but you have to think about some of the drawbacks. It's more expensive. The workflow can be more time consuming when you talk about, you know, making prints and exporting the mix, rendering the final files. It can take up more space in your room if you want a simpler setup. So there's more physical equipment. Also, you have to recall, right? So one thing that digital does is automatic recall. When you open up a session, all of your plugins and everything just boom. All of the faders, everything just recalls to whatever you saved it as the previous and latest version of that mixing session. It's not going to be the same way in analog. In analog, you have to recall, so that means you got to take pictures on your phone or with a camera, or take notes and recall it and things like that. If a piece of equipment goes down, then that's going to affect it. If you got bad cables, that's going to affect the sound, and you got to take care of that. So there are actual things about analog that is not necessarily the greatest compared to digital workflow wise. Digital is going to save you more time, it's going to save you more money, instant recall, all of those things. But I think that historically, when you hear what analog summon has done, I think it's just amazing, man. So if you want to get your record mixed or mastered by some of the top sounding engineers in the industry, make sure you contact our team, Frequency Canvas, at www.frequencycanvas.com. You can email us, office@frequencycanvas.com. You can text or call our business cell at 765-506-3380. Or if you want to reach out to me personally, you can email me at Kyren@frequencycanvas.com. And as we like to say here internally, welcome to the canvas. Look forward to working with y'all. Remember, analog summon sonically is more superior than digital, in my opinion. It's all opinions, but from years of doing this craft and this skill set, I believe that analog summon is superior, and I still think it has a place in modern day audio production and music production. All right, go make some great records, y'all. Be great.